What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Common Sense, the podcast. This is it, 2024, year-end show. I'm excited for this one. I wasn't sure this guy was going to say yes, but I was looking at everything. We just met recently, and I was like, man, his stories and what he does is kind of the perfect culmination to go out with a bang in 2024. So, Jason Bourgeois, welcome to the show, man.
So much, I'm honored. I appreciate the kind words. That's nice of you. I'm happy to be here. I was really tickled to get your invite, so thank you so much.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it, and like just doing my research more on you, and once we got a little more connected, I was just like, man, this is gonna be a good one. Like, I guarantee this is gonna be one you guys are gonna like. So, man, we met at the Apex Live event, like a month ago?
Yeah.
I think it's been about a month since that happened. Yeah. Right? Yeah, and it was one of those just chance encounters. We ended up kind of near each other and started chatting it up and exchanged information. And honestly, like, I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I was trying to put everything together and trying to remember everybody that I met that day. But like you definitely stuck out with like what we had going on conversation wise. So, man, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Give everybody like the little, the 20,000 foot elevated level real quick.
So happy to. So I was born in South Louisiana, a small town called Thibodaux. That if you've not been there, it's because you hadn't had a reason to go there. But I've got a very big family. My grandpa was one of 7. My dad is the oldest of 7, and then I am one of 16. So I've got a big family.
You're one of 16. Yeah. We've met someone that has my wife beat. This is awesome.
Yeah, I come from a big family in a small town in South Louisiana, and I grew up there and joined the military at 18. I went to Bible college for a couple of years. I went into the Marine Corps Reserves, so I did my initial training and went straight into Bible school. So I've kind of had the benefit of being able to live multiple lives really simultaneously. It's kind of a unique gift that I think I was given. But anyway, so Bible school, Marine Corps, a couple of deployments, switched from the Marine Corps to the Air Force. I was military police in both branches, and then deployed with the Air Force. They sent me to Afghanistan. I met a guy there working with Blackwater. So I came back from that deployment, and 6 months later, I was back in Afghanistan again with Blackwater, doing security contractor work at the embassy, and did that for 2 years. Came home, started a security franchise in Louisiana, and that was a new venture for me, getting into business ownership. I was about 29 years old when I made that decision. And wound up growing that over time, eventually partnered with another guy. He and I opened up some more franchises around the state. We grew to 8 locations in 3 states with 130 employees. Just exited that at the beginning of this year, that partnership. I still own my original franchise in Baton Rouge, run it remotely, about 3 to 5 hours a week of my time. And this year's been a big pivot to moving to Dallas and getting to know people and offering business coaching and consulting services, helping business owners learn to scale. So
that's awesome, man. That's so much. Like,
that's a lot.
Just to unpack just any of that is a lot, man. That's a problem. You don't hear many people that served in 2 branches unless it was just straight special forces. To be a Marine and be in the Air Force. I mean, you just don't see a lot of people jump one to the other, but I mean, you see it in certain communities within the military, but that had to be some interesting experience. What do you think was like the biggest difference?
Man,
because I mean, like some of the times, it's like the Marines, everybody jokes about the Marines eating crowns and all that stuff, and then they give the other branches shit. So I mean, like that had to be a little.
It was
weird
very different
at first.
When I switched. To be fully honest with you, I was looking for a way. So I'd gotten married and I had my first child, and I was very young. I was 22, I think, years old. And I was just trying to figure out a way to go active duty because my career prospects at the time weren't great. I wasn't making a lot of money, and trying to support a family. I thought, man, active duty, between the pay and the benefits, when I did the numbers on it, it's like, that's better than I'm making now. But the Marines, they said the best we can offer you is another deployment. But I'm like, yeah, but after a year, I'm back kind of in the same situation. And so I started looking at, well, what if I switched to the Air Force? And I wasn't enthusiastic about, I was really just kind of trying to chill at that point in my life. And the Marine Corps was, everything's gung-ho. I was like, man, those Air Force guys got it good. Let me go, I hear they get weekends and holidays off and, nice accommodations. Let me go see what that's like. The Air Force told me, and this is 2005, they said, we're not taking any prior service into active duty right now. And I told the recruiter, I said, I don't know if y'all got the memo about the war that's happening right now, but someone should tell y'all.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird stance to take. And anyway, so I wound up having a reserve recruiter contact me and said, hey, there's an avenue for you to go reserve, but get on orders. It's kind of a win-win. And so I wound up taking that road. And so I switched. The thing that I didn't anticipate was I was actually looking to pivot careers. I wasn't in love with being a cop. I didn't grow up dreaming about it like a lot of others did.
Yeah.
Just kind of happened on it. And so I was like, well, this is a good pivot. I'll switch careers. I'll do something that translates to better pay on the outside, like aircraft mechanic or something. And they said, well, your best chance of getting orders is staying with the cop thing. And I was like, I don't want to do that. He said, there's a $15,000 signing bonus. I said, all right, I'll do that. And so
money talked.
Yeah, so I did that. And as soon as I got in, I had all the regrets. Everybody in that particular career field was so ate up and gung-ho and telling me how we're like the infantry of the Air Force. I'm like, oh, what have I done? You guys need to chill out. Like, y'all are Air Force. Someone should tell y'all. So anyway, but I made the most of it. I was very fortunate. I got to do I found an actual job within that I liked. I was an anti-terrorism officer for a year and a half. And I kind of found some strengths there. I had a really great boss that pulled the best out of me when I got that role. And he wound up leaving me alone in that role for about 9 months after he left before they hired a replacement. So I kind of got to work autonomously and at a much higher level than I was working prior to that. And I found a lot more fulfillment in that. And then the Air Force said, hey, we're sending you to Afghanistan now. I was like, well, that's less fun. So I just kind of pivoted from there.
It's funny you telling that story and kind of like the bouginess of it. And I know they like to call you Bougie. Oh, we got to pause for a second.
Nice.
No, you come on in. Come on in with the heat.
What's this,
they
a
all want to see
marshmallow?
this. So we always do the what are you drinking, what are you smoking. So these guys all agreed to try my new drink at ICC. So we are calling this the Campfire Old Fashioned.
This is impressive.
It's basically like combining a s'mores and an old fashioned. So if you want to try this, stop by ICC. If you try it, please fill out a voting form because I'm going to kick their ass and get this on the menu. So
I am intrigued. Thank you.
yeah. So that's what we're doing. As far as smoking wise, Biz is over there smoking on a Genesis and got that 413. And I am smoking because I wanted to treat myself today to a Davidoff Maduro. This cigar, no, it's that the like really old, hasn't come out in years, Maduro wrapper. And this is absolutely a phenomenal cigar. But what I was going to tell you before they brought the drinks was my good friend Jason Redmond. You know, when he was a Navy SEAL, is a Navy SEAL, I don't say was, but he got in a little bit of trouble and got sent to Ranger School for punishment. And of course showed up with his like Frogman, Patagonia type stuff. And boy, did they give him a hard time. So when you were saying that, like I was just picturing him telling me that story about
That's funny.
Them calling him the bougie little seal that, had his Patagonia or Columbia stuff on.
It's funny how words evolve. So, my last name being Bourgeois, I do get called Bougie on account of my last name, but also I like to dress up and I like nice things a little bit. And I'm okay with it. It's a good branding thing for me, I guess. But back then, no one was saying that. Like that's kind of a more recent evolution.
Yeah.
But what they did call me then, and fair enough, was metrosexual. That was the term in the early 2000s for guys like me. How I would pack hair gel when we went in the field, and they'd tease me about, like, hey, look, I'm going to feel civilized at some point out here, and I'm going to fix my hair for me.
Hey, whatever works, man. I don't think you can call somebody that anymore. That'd probably cause all kinds of a ruckus in certain
that word's not
circles.
used anymore. We need to bring it back. I think it's a fun
There's
word.
a lot of words we need to bring back and just be real with. Like,
Yeah.
not everything has to hurt your feelings. Like, I'm so tired of some of this stuff. Well, your journey from military operations to like business consulting is fascinating to me. Like, but that seems to be, either business coaching, consulting, however you want to look at it, seems to be a real natural path for people that have had your kind of background. What do you think was like the defining moment that made you pivot and from like high threat situations and environments to helping businesses thrive in similar but different situations?
Well, that pivot took about 11 years. So the first pivot was to get from the high threat situation to back home. And the catalyst for that, for me, I started doing that work in 2010. October 2010 was my first stint as a civilian contractor. And, there had been guys doing it, for years at that point already. And I counted myself very fortunate to be there with them because there were some really amazing guys with some really incredible accomplishments and experience. And I was just doing the best I could to keep up. I didn't want to let them down or anything. But I'd hear stories. And one of the stories you'd hear sometimes is someone saying, "Oh, I'm done for good this time. I'm for real not coming back." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, you'll be back." And then I'd see people show up. They'd apparently been gone for a year, and they came back because they had a hard time. I said, "Okay, noted. I don't want to do that. If I leave, I want to leave for good when I'm ready." And it was a good paying gig, but I knew it wasn't a forever solution, and I was really trying to figure out what my next move was going to be. And so I really kind of leveraged that position to pay off the debt. I got us debt free, doing that job in about 13 months. And so that was a really big accomplishment I was really proud of. And, but through that, the whole time, so my older brother passed away right before I went and did that job in June of 2010. And it was very unexpected. He was a Marine Corps vet as well. He was actually on active duty in the Marine Corps at the time. He was moving from North Carolina to California, and his U-Haul flipped on the interstate. It was really just caught everyone off guard, and it was really
Sorry
unexpected.
to hear that, man.
Yeah, and so in the aftermath of that, I had already accepted the job with Blackwater, but my mom, was understandably a little worried, about me going back. And so anyway, but I want to, the whole time, told her and my family, I said, look, number one, if anything goes bad, these are the people you'd want me to be with. Like, I'm at least in the right company to keep me safe. Number two, the work itself is not, it was not offensive in nature, but defensive. So if something goes bad, we're trying to protect the person we're protecting and retreat and get out of there. So, it kind of minimizes, in my estimation, at least your risk a little bit. And then third, and this was the bigger note, is I know I'm expendable to the government, and I don't matter, and that's fine. That's why they're paying us so much. But the person we're protecting is, and that's why they're paying all this money to have all these people, to be around them. So worst comes to worst, if the ambassador or the diplomat or whoever we're protecting is in trouble, they'll at least send a helicopter for him, and hopefully there's room for us. So that was kind of the deal that I made when I took that gig. But in 2012, when the incident in Benghazi happened, and they let the ambassador die and the protection detail with him, I was like, y'all just changed the script on me. That's not the deal that I'm here for. So my next rotation home on leave, because it was like 90 days, about 100 days over and about 30 days home. So my next rotation home, I contacted the franchisor. I had contacted him before, but I reactivated the conversation. I said, if y'all can get me funding before I go back, I won't go back. And so wound up getting pre-approval for funding for that. And I was able to come home and stay home. So November of 2012 was whenever I quit that job and started gearing up to start my business. And so it was February of 2013 when we officially launched. But what I didn't know at the time and learned later was that funding that I got. So the funding that I got was this credit card funding program where they opened like 25 credit cards, liquidated them all. So I started my business on $120,000 of credit card debt, and good luck. And so that was my only source of income, was whatever I can sell. And so I kind of put myself in a position of succeed or fail, it's on you at this point. And so I kind of lit the fire underneath me. I do wish I'd made different decisions, in retrospect.
Yeah.
However, I think the consequence of those decisions were I got better at financial acumen, a lot better at managing a business, just from a financial standpoint, just because sink or swim. And I got better at sales because, my whole life depended on it. And
family to feed.
yeah. And so, I had just had my third daughter Actually, my third daughter was born the week I launched the business. And so I have 4 children now, but at the time I had 3 girls. And so I had a wife and 3 kids I was trying to support. And that was a lot of pressure trying to get that thing off the ground.
Man, I can't even imagine. That's a ton. Well, what do you think is one piece of advice that you wish someone had told you when you were just starting out that maybe now that you share with your clients?
Focus is crucial. It took me years to learn how important focus is. People are surprised when they get to know me a little bit because I'm pretty calm generally. But people would be surprised to learn how, how ADD I actually am. I've learned to contain it really, really well. People that knew me, when I was younger, they're surprised to see me now. And so it's interesting seeing the other side of the spectrum. Like, oh, you're surprised at you don't know, what I keep at bay. But that came from years of just learning to just focus, block out the things that don't really, that aren't the main thing, and just really focus on the main thing and concentrate your time around it, your energy, and really build that. So for instance, my company's a security guard franchise. We do security guards and patrol services. And at the time especially, it was primarily just apartment complexes. About 90+% of my revenue was working in apartments. And we would basically be an alternative to a courtesy officer. They give free rent to, hey, just pay us to patrol instead. And that was most of my sales efforts were educating the consumer on it because that wasn't being done in the state. I was the first person to offer that to them. And so it was an interesting experience to do that. So I would sell during the day and patrol at night, and eventually I would hire guards to patrol at night, and I'd still kind of be on at night. At some point, I looked at buying a landscaping franchise that was available for sale that had a little bit of revenue on it, and it was a good price that he was offering it for, and he had commercial real estate firm that was taken off, and so he was just looking to shed that. But everyone around me said, don't do that. It's not your main thing. It's going to distract you. In retrospect, I do wish I'd have gotten it because there was an opportunity there, but also that's from the business standpoint. When I look at who I was at the time, I lacked the ability to focus, and it would have been probably a detriment to both those businesses because it would have divided my focus more than it needed. I think the lesson I learned in that is the most valuable lesson I could give business owners today is just because the opportunity does make perfect sense doesn't mean that it makes sense for you right now. And a mentor of mine says, the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. And I think that that's a really good example of that. That was definitely the right move. It made a lot of sense, but it wasn't the right time. And I think I as a leader wasn't able to focus as much as I should have. And it was important for me to learn to leave that behind. And I think that I carried that lesson through so many other much smaller decisions, but it's the small decisions that stack up to make that focus more powerful.
I like that a lot, man. That hits home on so many different levels because, you can get too scattered or unfocused, or if you have too many things pulling on you, you can't be great at one thing.
Right.
So I like that a lot, man. That's very solid. So how do your personal interests and activities, such as I see all these crazy things you do, you play drums, you're into skydiving, how does this contribute to your professional life and your business philosophy?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I don't know that it so much translates to my business philosophy, although it might on some level. I've been playing drums since I was a teenager, and it's just something that I never wanted to let go of. I remember being early 20s, meeting guys in their 40s who would say to me, oh, I used to play drums. And internally, I registered as I'm never going to be you. I never want to say I used to play drums. So I'm going to just stick with it. I don't care if I'm in a band or not. I'm just going to never lose it. I'll just so I would rent a mini storage, set my drums up somewhere remote where I could go and play and not bother anybody. So that's just been a hobby of mine that I've just kept alive just because I enjoy doing it. Never really done anything major with it other than just I enjoy it. But I got divorced in 2020, and in the aftermath of the divorce, like anyone that's been through divorce knows, you go through, it's just the prerequisite depressed phase. I think everyone needs to go through that, and you got to kind of reestablish yourself and really find yourself again. And so I went through that. I'm no exception. But in the aftermath of it, I dated for a little bit. I didn't like the results that I was getting from dating, but I also took it very much internally. Like everyone asks, I think, what is wrong with me? And I think I asked it, but I think I processed it a little bit differently. When I took an objective look at myself, I recognized I'm kind of boring. Like, I used to be a badass. I used to work, in Afghanistan and do black art and all these things. But like, that's so far at this point, this was, 10 years in my past at that point. And my day job, I own a security company, and that might sound cool, but really I went to the office and I came home, and that was it. I'd work late some nights. I'd cook dinner for myself. I'd watch a movie and, drink some wine, and that was it. Like, that was my life in a nutshell. It was very boring. After the divorce, I did set the drums up in the living room, and I started to kind of decorate my house a little bit, kind of make it nice. And I realized that the drum set didn't look like I wanted it to in the living room with the decor. So I was looking online to find a drum set that looked like I wanted, and I found one, but I couldn't find it to buy. It was just, I had a picture of it. And I'd always known you could buy shells and make your own drums. And so I thought, well, I'm just build my own drum set. So I did that. I bought the raw shells, the hardware, stained it myself, drilled it, and put them all together. And I've got this really cool custom set that I made myself. And I got a little satisfaction in that. It made me feel good. But once that project was over, I needed another hobby. And so I kind of looked at, like, okay, what would make me interesting? And then really it was, the bigger question is, well, it would be interesting if you just did the things you enjoy. So what do I enjoy? So I kind of asked myself that question, or what are the things you thought about doing you never did, and why not? And so I started pursuing getting my skydiving license. I got about 13 jumps in, and I've shelved it since. I need to pick it back up when the weather warms up, especially now. I used to have to drive from Baton Rouge to Houston or south of Houston to go to the drop zones. It was a lot to do. Now I'm in Frisco. The drop zone's a 45-minute drive from my house. So I just moved in August, and so my plan is when the weather warms up, I want to finish getting my license. I still have the credits. Like, I can just go jump, and so I just need to go finish doing it. But anyway, it was an effort to, in a way, make myself more interesting, but also just make my life more interesting for me. And so I started pursuing skydiving. I started pursuing comedy. I found out where open mics were, so I started going to open mic comedy shows just for fun. And I kind of had a knack for it. I was making people laugh. I was enjoying it. I was like, all right, I'll just keep doing this. And before moving here last year, I was doing about 3 or 4 open mics a week. I was starting to get booked on shows. I was like, all right, this is working. And only recently I've started to kind of get booked on shows again here in the Dallas area.
Well, so you have one coming up, don't you? I think I saw like January
26th.
To my birthday, I think. Yeah, 26.
Yeah, it's going to be a Sunday night in Wiley at the B&B Theater. I'm really excited about that. I've also got one tomorrow night at Dallas Comedy Club. It's not as advertised. It's a little bit different. It's a dating game. And so I'm going to be one of the bachelors on it. There's a bachelorette. She'll be blindfolded, and there's 3 comics. And so, like, that's the whole thing. The guy that hosts it used to do one of these dating shows on TV or something, I think. And he's a comedian. He's really funny. But so he hosts this thing. He does a casting call for it. Anyone that's interested. I did one before a few months ago, and it was fun. I won it. And so I'll see how this one goes tomorrow night. But anyway, that one's just kind of a fun thing I enjoy doing.
What got you to where you were like really comfortable doing that though? Like, not everybody's gonna like make this list of things that I wish I'd done or could do, and then actually start pursuing them.
Yeah.
As quickly as I foresee you did. And then, like, to just, like, not have any speaking in front of an audience, being funny, telling jokes. Like, not everybody, I mean, even if you can do, like, the whole joke thing, but then being on stage, spotlight on you, like, what was the growing curve like that with, or was that just very natural for you?
2 things. It's kind of natural for me, but 2 things, though, is one is I'm really an all-in kind of person. Like, once I decided to do, like, I quit the job in Afghanistan and went straight into starting the business. Like, I'm just all in. When I do something, I go all the way in. That's just how I'm wired. It could go the other way for me, and I fully admit that. I've just been fortunate that I've been able to kind of put what I needed to behind it, kind of had the right vision and ideas and actions to get the results when I've gone all in. But that can be a very scary thing for the wrong partner. And I scared the hell out of my ex-wife several times with that. Just especially quitting the job in Afghanistan to start the business and get us into 100, after getting us debt free, getting us into 120,000 in credit card debt. Like that's just, I think that's a really good object lesson of just my personality type. I'm very much all in, but because I'm all in on making it work too. So that's part of it. That's part of the, I want to do these things. Why not? Let's just do it. And how can I make it work? But the other aspect of it is I actually don't get stage shy at all. When I was in Bible school, I was in the band there. So like you're on stage already. I mean, you're hiding behind a drum set. It's a little bit different, but I've been on stages. And then also before Hurricane Katrina, I was working on Bourbon Street. When I got back from my Iraq deployment in 2005, I worked in the summer and I started bouncing, and then they liked me there. They wanted to see me do the MC audition. So I was MCing at a couple of different clubs on Bourbon Street during the summer of 2005. And so it's actually where I met my ex-wife. She was a tourist, and I was working on Bourbon Street. So I evacuated for Katrina.
Gave her a few hand grenades.
Yeah, and so anyway, so I've got some experience being on stage, kind of entertaining people, on my own. And each time there's a little bit of, unsurety that comes with it. I'm not sure how I'm going to translate this, but I kind of pivot pretty well. And then just tackled onto that, the other aspects of it are, I've always considered myself conversationally funny. Two people or a group of people, I can make people laugh. As things come up, I'll throw something out, and it's fun. I enjoy that. And I've always enjoyed making people laugh, but the idea of getting on stage, making strangers laugh with no concept seemed like that's a whole nother challenge. I don't know how to do that. I'm not sure if I could do that. So when I found out about open mics, I went to one, and I talked to the host after. And in fact, the guy that I'm telling the story about, he was hosting my first open mic I ever attended in New Orleans. And he's the one I talked to after. And he's touring with Matt Rife right now. And he's been all over the world with Matt. I'm like following his progress. Wow. I'm like, dude, this is so cool. I love that I got to meet you before you like really took off, But he's a really funny comic. But his name is Alex Quiroz. And anyway, he's the one I talked to after. I went to talk to him after the mic. I was like, look, I've always thought about doing this, but I don't know. And this is what he told me. He said, you go to the gym, right? I said, yeah. He said, you do workout. He said, you do a set of bench press. You expect anyone to clap after? I was like, well, no. He's like, right, because it's a workout. That's what an open mic is. Think of it as a gym for comics. It's just a workout. Yeah. If people are clapping, like, that's not what you're there for. I was like, okay, that's fair. And so I signed up to an open mic the next week and put my name on the list before I could change my mind, slammed a couple shots of vodka, and then sat there and tried to figure out what I'm going to say. And so, my first set was pretty lame, but, I got a few chuckles, and that was all I needed. And so, just kind of kept doing it. So
that's awesome, man. I love that when people just like, they don't just talk about it, we're going to go do it. Like it doesn't matter. We'll figure it out as we go, but not that there isn't a plan or, some actions that you have already, thought through.
Yeah.
But I love that. It sounds like, and from just the amount of time I've talked to you and things I've looked at that you've put out there, it sounds like accountability is a big part of your strategy and how you operate. Yeah. So how do you encourage people to embrace that in whatever business culture they're in, especially in one that like really tries to avoid confrontation?
Yeah.
Because that is something I see a lot.
Man, that's a great question. You're right. Accountability is very big for me. I intentionally put myself in environments where I am accountable to somebody for something. Absent that, I've seen how I behave and how I operate absent that, and I don't like the results of it. And so I've seen great results in my life born from accountability, so it's led me to embrace accountability. And sometimes it's a matter of, some environments are like engineered for accountability, so joining that environment gives you that accountability. I got really good early on at curating accountability for myself in environments that didn't exist anyway. And so for example, I've got, my business in Baton Rouge, I've got about 32 employees there, but there's a leadership team of 3 that I meet with them once a week. And every week we meet for an hour and a half, and it's a Zoom call, and we work through whatever issues. We also have like to-dos and things that we're supposed to do. And I am accountable to them. I'm the owner of the company. They work for the company, and so I'm their boss. But I'm just as accountable to them as I expect them to be to me. And if there's a to-do with a date on it, I tell them I expect you to ask me why if I didn't miss a deadline. You know, like I owe you that answer because you're my team. And if I'm going to expect you to deliver on a due date, then you need to know that I'm going to deliver on a due date. And the times where I miss a deadline, I'm open to them about it. You know what? I was supposed to carve out time and I didn't carve out time. I did something that I shouldn't have done. Instead, I did this other thing and I should have been prioritizing this. And that takes a certain level of humility that I think some people are scared to embrace, especially leaders, because they're so scared that if I show some vulnerability to the people that I'm leading, they're not going to respect me. But I'll tell you, I've done this for years now. I get more respect from owning up to my faults than I do from pretending that I don't have any. And what it creates for me personally, the reward for me is I feel more comfortable in this environment because I don't have to keep up a facade. I don't have to be someone I'm not. I can be just as faulty as anybody else, but I get to demonstrate to them resilience even when I'm going through adversity in my personal life or really busy or whatever. I give them an example of what it looks like to, hey, prioritize this, focus on that. Or, hey, you know what? I've been kicking this deadline for a month now. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something different. Let me schedule some time to do this. Let's put it on the calendar now. It'll do it right in front of them. And so sometimes it's just a matter of shifting something because I don't like to continue to let them down. And so that is my segue to this other piece, which is I heard this phrase in my early 20s. I don't know if I heard the phrase, I came up with it or what. I really don't remember where I got it from. But it's you're nothing until someone expects something of you. And I'm a living example of that. So many times through my career as I progressed on things, I wound up getting a boss that I was scared of because I was able to skate by with everybody else because I could talk my way out of something or lie or scam or whatever. And then I'd get a boss that would actually hold me accountable. And then the growth that I experienced through having that kind of boss who didn't really let me kind of weasel out of whatever my responsibilities were, I kind of became a different person in those. And so I learned to embrace those kind of people. But ultimately I learned that those people really expected me to show up and deliver. And I had one of them even pull me aside. This was after I switched from the Marines to the Air Force. And he said, dude, you've been sitting out here on the flight line doing flight line security. I know that's a skate job. I want you to learn how to do the dispatch work because I need someone. If I've got a Marine on this shift, I want my Marine to actually work for me. I was like, oh man. Now, until then, I'd kind of enjoyed relative and accountability and a pretty skate job. And all of a sudden, I've got a tough boss who had a bad reputation of being a really tough boss. And I'm going to be working in close proximity to him, and he's going to expect a lot of me. But it really grew a lot in me. And it helped me kind of discover the parts of me that no one was pulling out of me. And so I have learned to kind of curate that and try to create situations where someone expects me to deliver something by a deadline or deliver it a certain way. And either I surprise myself one way or another, but I don't want to let myself down and I don't want to let them down. And that becomes the driving factor for me is I don't want to let you down. I don't want you to think less of me. If you think this of me, then I want to maintain that. And the longer you live at that higher level, the more you kind of embody that. And then the more you eventually just become that. You know, I mean, some people call it fake it till you make it. To me, I don't think of it as faking it. I think of it as, hey, you might have to stretch yourself to arrive at a certain level, but once you've stretched yourself long enough, eventually that becomes your new norm. So if you're ready to like get to your new norm, put yourself in a situation where someone expects that to be the norm.
Well, I think they say fake it till you make it because they don't want to tell you that there was pain and right. failures in there. So true. Like that's part of it. Like you're not going to do it perfectly. So fake it, I think, is just more of I think it's gotten taken the wrong way a lot of times. But yeah, you're going to have to fake it a little bit. You're gonna have to fail. You're gonna have to have pain and suffering to get to that next level. Yeah. Like there is no move to the next level without failing and learning. Yeah. And I mean that's so in that you kind of tied into where I was going to go with this next because your actual example was that with your business, which is remote. So are there other strategies I see you employ, especially maybe not just in your business, but from a coaching standpoint? Because today's workforce is so hybrid and you have the remote situations. How are you helping them maintain accountability and really high level achievements with those factors?
I'll start by saying I'm a big fan of in-person, face-to-face. There's everything is secondary to that, and I'm a staunch proponent of that. You can make it work remotely or over Zoom or whatever, and those are good, kind of maintain momentum. But you get a certain breakthrough in person that you just can't get remotely. And I think that it's important to prioritize in person at whatever cost you need or you can prioritize it. So even with my team, we meet quarterly for an all-day meeting. That's an in-person meeting. And we meet weekly over Zoom, but about once a month I try to make it down there and have that meeting in person. And if there's a confrontation that needs to happen, I really rather it happen in person. If it means I need to delay it, I'll delay it if I can. But I prefer that to be in person. But sometimes it just needs to happen over Zoom or it needs to happen over the phone. But so there's kind of a fine line. There's one side of me that will say, save that confrontation till you have a chance to be in person. But there's another side of me that, depending on the severity of what needs to be confronted, is this can't wait. You need to address it immediately. Now, when you're all in person all the time, I'm always defaulting to always address immediately. Don't delay. Get right into it. But it's really important that you embrace conflict. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace accountability. Don't be afraid of it. But prioritize in person when you can. It's always best. Everything else is secondary. So just treat it accordingly and try to connect where you can.
That's awesome. Man, the shit talking has begun. This is hilarious. I'm just seeing this out of the background. Sea Rangers.
I hope there's people that knew me when I was younger that vouching that I was a raging idiot.
No, it's one of my good friends is on here. I've been trying to get him on the show, but he's being a little chicken shit, and he was asking if you were a Steel or a Ranger. I guess he jumped in a little late here.
Neither.
But he's like, you're trying to get me on after a guy like this comes on here?
Not a Steel or Ranger, Reserve Military Police, the Marines and Air Force.
But yeah, now a bunch of mutual buddies are all like trashing each other on here. It's pretty solid.
That's funny.
Well, with that being said, since we're kind of talking about social media here, I'd be interested to see what your perceptions are on this. With social media and the way it is today, how do you think entrepreneurs can really stay, authentic while building the professional and personal brands?
That's a good one. I'm essentially doing the same myself. So I started my business in 2013, and it was a franchise. And during that time, I kind of hid behind the franchise brand.
Yeah.
Partly as a matter of convenience, partly because I knew one day I'd sell it, and if it was, Jason Bourgeois slathered all over it, it was a little harder to sell, and so building up the brand makes it easier to sell at some point. So there was that methodology behind it. Another part of it was because in my career field, the quiet professional is what's held up as, in high esteem. And so I'd kind of built myself as the quiet professional. So, not seen or heard. I mean, if in diplomatic security, if you're seen, in a picture with the principal, you're doing it wrong, and there's a lot of, everyone pounces on some guy that posts a picture of him with a principal, you're doing your job wrong. You're supposed to if you're doing your job right, you're not seen or heard, and the principal's safe, and that's what matters. It's not the you show. And so that was kind of my thought process going into that business and really throughout that business. When I would sell, I wasn't really selling me. I would sell, I did this, but you're not getting my background. You're getting other people, but here's how I run my company. Here's how I hold my guards accountable. And so that's essentially what I would sell. Well, this pivot for me this year has been a lot of me learning how to brand myself. And that's a first. I've never branded myself at all.
It's tough.
And so I had to get over this whole, the mental thing I fight is, the quiet professional should shut up and not be on social media and stuff. But the person that knows I need to be, doing personal branding is, hey, get out there, talk, get on things. And so that's the inner turmoil that I have to overcome every time I'm posting a video.
Learning you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah. And so there's that aspect of it where you just kind of embrace the discomfort of it a little bit and embrace this version of, hey, you really want to brand yourself, then here's how you do it. For me, I have found that just you got to learn your own voice. And I have found through conversation with people, I come across most authentically in conversation. Just what I'm doing here with you, I'm just ignoring that there's a camera and a microphone here. This is just a conversation that I'm having. Yeah. And that's just authentic. People just authentically communicate that way. And so as much as I can stay in that zone, stay present, I'll show up as me, how I show up. And hopefully I can capture that and let that be the content. I have got a few videos on my social media of me talking to my phone. And let me tell you, I was so uncomfortable doing that every time. I literally would record it. I would just think of what topic I'm going to say it, wing it, and just upload it, not watch it again. Just put it up. Like, I'm not going to second guess this because I'm going to sit here and
honestly, I have most of my questions really thought out before I sit down with you. And every now and then you see me here going through my questions on certain shows. Man, to be completely honest, I watched several of the podcasts you'd been on, especially recently. Yeah. And even some of the just clips, and they were so solid. And we just recently got a new program where we're putting out more short form content. Oh, nice. Because, that's one of the biggest challenges with a podcast is cutting up your content and putting out other short form content, because the majority of people are not going to sit and give you an hour or 2 hours of their time, especially when they don't know the guest.
Right.
And if you have and you're not in one lane, this particular podcast that I do, it doesn't stay in just one lane. I would love for it to all the time because it would make it so much easier.
Yeah.
But then I feel like there's just so many other people I know and people that I want to bring on and have conversations with that I think are valuable to everybody else. But then it's clipping that out and taking some of those nuggets, because then they see the clip. They have no idea who Jason Bourgeois is, and they see this clip of you talking. That starts getting a bunch of attention. Well, then they're like, oh, I'm going to go find that episode. I want to hear what else he said.
Yeah.
But just getting to that point is really hard.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, too. I think of, networking is something I know you and I are both really huge on.
Yeah.
But I also feel like networking can just be a buzzword.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people say I'm going to this networking event. They talk to one person, and then they're like the 6th grade boy at his first dance, and he's sitting on the wall.
Yeah.
Like, these people are just going to come up and start a conversation and build a relationship with you.
Yeah.
And you're really just wasting a bunch of time if you're not putting yourself out there at all. I think that last Apex Live event, I don't know if Ryan did this on purpose. I'm sure it was part of his mad genius. But I had gone and worked out with one of the speakers, Derek, beforehand, and then he cut that short and was like, well, I'm going to go back. I gotta get back to work on my presentation. I got to put the finishing touches on it. Like, all right, cool. So I stopped, got some breakfast, then showed up over there. Well, shit, I was 2 hours early. So I had no choice but to either just sit there and play on my phone, which would have been the dumbest thing in the world, or go and start talking to people and meeting people. And that's where we met and started having a conversation. So what's your opinion on networking? And maybe what's the funniest or the most unexpected moment you've had at a random networking thing?
Oh, man. I'll have to think about that one. Maybe I'll think of it by the time I finish answering the first question. So I've been networking like it's my job. So I am fortunate. I'm in a unique position that not many people get to enjoy, where my business pays my bills. I run it remotely 3 to 5 hours a week. Now, last year it was 20 to 25 hours. I've really just put a lot of effort into kind of condensing it over time. And I spent a few months at the beginning of this year literally doing nothing but stopping myself from getting involved in the business and empowering my team to do things just so I could get them better at stuff and practice not just running to solve problems all the time. And that was hard to do. But so I spent a few months just doing nothing. I didn't want to obligate myself just yet in any direction. I didn't want anyone to expect anything in case I got to hurry up and scramble and fly to Baton Rouge or something. Well, once I started networking, it was in June of this year, and I started kind of going to a few networking events here and there and meeting with people. By June, I had met with 43, and I just counted these numbers today, actually, because I was curious. I wanted to get my 2024 roundup. By June, I had met with 43 people one-on-one as a result of meeting them at networking events. And I think that's the part where most people get networking confused. They think of the networking event as the chance to earn business. And I think the networking event is a chance to earn an introduction. It's up to you to be interesting enough to get a meeting with them after. And a meeting with them after is where the value is. But also, in that meeting after, don't go into it expecting to pitch them, sell them, close them in that meeting. If anything, you're just trying to be known. I look at networking as marketing. That's really all it is. And there's a difference between marketing and selling. Selling is I'm talking to someone that is in the market to buy, and we're probably talking about price and objections and closing a deal. Marketing is simply brand awareness, and that's a multi-year, effort. And a lot of people really get that twisted. They look to marketing to do sales for them, instead of looking at marketing as simply brand awareness to make your sales conversations more seamless when you get to them. That's the real difference between the two. And so I look at networking as simply marketing. All I'm doing is letting people get to know me. I'm new in town. I moved here without knowing a soul in Dallas. So the best thing I can do is let people get to know me, get to know them, and then hopefully provide some value from them. If I get to know enough people, I can you need this. I know someone that has that, and be able to offer some value. But even then, I'm careful. I don't make referrals unless I know there's really some value there. I don't just throw out, just because I know someone. So I like to know multiple people in each discipline, because even though they may all do the same thing, the personality might be different from one person to the next. And so I want to make a personality match. I want to, make sure all these things make sense, what their niches are and things. So it helps for me to learn a lot of people. So June, I joined a networking group called Master Networks. They've got 40 some odd chapters in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And I like it because I can have my seat in my one chapter, but I can visit as many chapters as I want. So I go about 3 networking chapters a week with Master Networks. And to date, I've met with about 115 unique people one-on-one as a result of meeting them from a networking group and said, hey, let's go grab coffee, lunch, or just sit together and meet for an hour. So that's 115 one-hour conversations. Most people don't have time to do that because they've got a real job. They've got, a business and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. I'm getting this thing off the ground, and all I'm really doing is branding. I haven't even launched my group coaching stuff. That'll be Q2 probably whenever I launch that. So all of my effort right now is simply get to know Jason. I just want to get to know you. And in February, I'm going to start launching my own after-hours thing. I'm going to call it Bougie Business After Hours. So it'll be a networking event that I'm going to invite all these people that I've met with one-on-one. So, hey, I want you to come to my thing. And so I'm trying to cross-pollinate as much as I can. So the statistics that I've found today is that out of the 115 people I met with, 56 are members of this Master Networks thing that I'm in. The rest are not Master Networks. So that's going to be a value to them. Hey, y'all are all only have so much time to be in your one little, chapter or your one group. Come to my thing. I'm going to try and invite all these people. And maybe they come this month or the next month. I'll run it as a monthly thing. And that's going to be my value. I want to offer that as a benefit to them so that they can hopefully find new people to do business with. But it's that intentionality. I actually got a text from someone today that I met. She's a really great woman. She's a business coach. And she said something like, I'm learning that this is not really about the meeting, but it's about making those deep connections after. And that's the thing that I would tell people is it's those deep connections afterward that are really the value of networking. And whatever extent you put that. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and she was looking at doing networking. She's never done any networking. And I said, there's 2 ways to go about it. There's wide and there's deep. I am trying to go wide and deep, and only because I have the bandwidth to do it. But you can go wide. Most people go wide, but they don't go deep with people. They just go to as many events as they can, exchange cards, and hope it comes back to them. But some people, and these are the ones that I would commend the most, they go deep. And you don't need to be going to 3 chapters a week like I do or whatever. You can pick one group, and you can go so deep with that group or start your own, be the chair or the president or whatever it is of that group, and just be the one sponsoring every event. Be the one that every time a new member comes, you're the first one to reach out to them and say, hey, let's go grab coffee. And you can really lead yourself there really well. And you can automatically become the go-to person in that group just by being the one at the forefront. And to me, that's a lot of value to someone, especially if they're really wanting to stay in one geographic area. Pick that chamber of commerce, pick that networking chapter, pick that group, whatever it is, find your tribe and just do all you can to provide as much value to them and be the welcome committee that the newcomers meet with when they come in.
I like a lot of what you just said, and I have a lot of the same opinions on this, especially when I've been coaching other sales guys or we get into deep sales conversations. I think where a lot of salespeople really miss the mark and a lot of companies is you're hired to sell. Networking is a part of your job.
Yeah.
They spend all the initial upfront training on teaching you how to sell, and your expectations are to sell. So a lot of people that are young or really just taking a sales job on for the first time, they get so hung up on making the sale that they forget to be personable. Yeah. And they don't learn the networking aspect, like you just said, of going deep. You know, it doesn't have to be quantity. It can just be a few really quality conversations. And I've had to tell several sales guys this. It's not what they can do for you. It's what you can do for them.
Yeah.
And when you're networking, you're only trying to connect and get information on how you can do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, that takes getting to know the person. Don't be that person that is sitting there already ready for your response and ready to feed them. They start talking about their kids and, oh, I just had twins. Oh, imagine that. I have twins too. No, right. You just that's great. You have more ammo.
Yeah.
Keep asking them questions about their experience twins. God, that's got to be really hard. Like, I'll bet you've been chasing both ends of it for God knows how long now. How have you managed to do that and keep your job? You know, just keep feeding that and keep getting more crucial information that helps you build that. But I think that a lot of people get it backwards. They want the sell, and they think the networking comes with it. Now I can entertain. Now I can whatever. And it's like, man, you're never going to get there if you don't spend the time building those relationships.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny you mentioned the twins, the newborns. My favorite question to ask new parents when they just had a new baby is, have you slept yet? And most of the time, I'm like, no, not really.
Yeah.
But it kind of gives them an opportunity to know, like, hey, I'm not going to blow your ear up about business right now. I understand you're going through a lot. And I feel like it kind of softens the conversation a little bit. Like, hey, you just had a baby, 3 weeks ago. I'm not expecting you to make big business decisions right now. You want to talk about it? Because it sounds like you probably haven't slept yet.
Yeah, so. I mean, I guess that's a good thing. 'Cause I don't have kids, so I didn't have to experience that.
Oh, man.
Man, Clay, you are putting it all out there today. Here you are worried about coming on here and what I'm going to ask you. But maybe is this like reverse Jedi shit here where you're putting all the things out there that you thought I would say, and you're just like going to test the waters and see who actually sees this or talks about it? Because you've put almost all of them out there. I mean, there's no more great stories to tell. So I guess now you can just talk about the important things. This fool's like literally talking about like the time when he was in sales doing the same thing as me, and he stripped down to his underwear in the like sand volleyball court like shower thing.
You got to get him on
$100.
You got to get him on. I got to hear that story.
Yeah. So he's like just throwing it all out there. He's crazy.
That's funny.
So, and I don't know how deep you want to go into this, and like this is totally up to you how you want to answer this, because I know you're working on getting your coaching out there more.
I'm open book, man.
You're building up there. But what are some of the key components of the Bourgeois operational scalability system, which I think you call BOSS?
Yeah.
And how can that be effective for businesses? Like, what do they need to know about that? Like, what's your approach there?
So it's essentially helping businesses put an actual infrastructure in their business. It's modeled after really the EOS system that I implemented in my business. I had an implementer with it. But even then, we still kind of strayed from it a little bit, but it was really effective. Truthfully, it's the reason I'm able to operate my business remotely is because of these things that we've implemented in the business. And it's first starting with getting the whole team aligned with their core values, the mission, the vision, setting your 5-year, 1-year goals and breaking that down into quarterly goals and helping them get down to it. And so we put that in place. My business partner and I that I was operating with in 2021, we started merging. We had kind of a yours, mine, and ours franchise situation. So it was like separate entities. But in 2021, we started operate them all as one. And so we spent that year really consolidating them and really kind of getting our leadership all aligned, working together. And that was a bit of a hurdle. And I think that's a hurdle in any company. Everyone wants to move in the same direction, but the way they see going about doing it might be different. And so when you go through an actual intentional process where you get the whole team together and you say, hey, we're going to turn off our phones and we're going to be here present all day long. We're going to spend 8 hours together, and here are the things we're going to iron out. We're not going to leave this room until we have an actual vision statement we're all aligned on, a mission statement we're aligned on, and core values we're aligned on. And then a follow-up, 30 days later, all right, we're going to set some goals now based on that. If these are the things that we're aligned on, then what do our goals need to be? And then, let's dial those back and figure out what's that, 10-year goal, 5-year, 1 year, and then break that 1 year into quarterly goals. What do we need to do each quarter? And then in order to accomplish this in each quarter, what do we need to accomplish? What are the main objectives to get there for the quarter? And then our weekly meetings are kind of that cadence to make sure we're on track or off track on it. Each person owns a piece of it. And what it really does is it gives the leadership team, each person, ownership over something, because each person is assigned whatever it is their objective is that they're responsible for. But you can't get to that point until you start with the beginning. And so a lot of people go straight to, hey, here's what we're going to do this quarter. But when you're missing all that foundational work, you wind up not hitting those quarterly goals. And so it's really taking a step back and said, let's really spend some time putting this together. And then once it's in place, this is now the cadence. We meet weekly for an hour and a half. We meet quarterly for an all day, and we meet annually for 2 days. And each of these things, here's the objectives that we're doing, that we're reevaluating this, we're reevaluating that. We're setting new targets. We're making sure we're doing it. And we're taking an honest assessment. Did we hit our goals or we not hit our goals? And if we didn't hit our goals, is it because we're setting our goals too lofty or we're not putting action behind it? What's missing? What do we need to put in place? So it's really a very intensive process of working with businesses to get them on an actual system that works. So,
all right. There's a lot of people really latching into these EOS systems,
yeah,
and doing that. Like I'm hearing about that more and more and more, no matter who you talk to, how small or big the business is.
Yeah.
So when it comes to scaling a business, there's a lot going on with like AI and automation right now. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a game changer or trending right now?
Oh, no, 100%.
Where are you at in all this AI stuff right now?
It's 100% a game changer. I'm not really in a place where I'm personally leveraging a lot of it. I use a little bit of AI right now, aside from what works behind the scenes on things that I use kind of day in and day out. But it is absolutely, and just the evolutions it's making are just monumental. I mean, it seems like every 3 months we're hearing that, yeah, the last iteration is, the size of, Mercury, but this next one's the size of Jupiter. Like, that's the kind of changes we're making. Like, it's just massive changes. And to not take advantage of it to some extent is just a missed opportunity for anybody right now. And so it's not something I've personally specialized in. I might be missing the mark on that in some way. Right now, my main focus is meeting with people in person. So I'm really just prioritizing in-person connection with people just for me. But that's only because what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, I'm kind of going a bit against the grain. And by doing so, I feel like I'm doing something unique. Basically, where everyone's going to Zoom, I'm going in person. And so I'm just trying to prioritize that. Just because there's some authenticity I can kind of deliver in that, and there's just some deep connection that I think some people are lacking. So I can offer that. However, that's not to say that I'm sleeping on AI. There's tremendous upside.
Well, on that same note, I mean, I get asked this all the time, and I do have people reaching out. The cool thing about the show where it's at now is I have people reaching out that want to come on and talk about certain things.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I have not ever changed my mind on so far is, doing this remotely with any one of the platforms and having the guest be remote.
Yeah.
I just think you lose so much of the authenticity, the vibe, everything that's happening here when we're actually sitting across from each other, having this type of conversation. I think it gets lost. There can be too many distractions. A lot of those like Zoom podcasts and whatever other platform you want to throw in there, they don't always seem connected.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I know not everybody watches. Like, it's funny to look at the ratios too of who just watches with the video and who just listens.
Yeah.
You know, because like now Spotify has for a little while now, but there was a time where Spotify was just audio. You didn't get an opportunity to watch it. Joe Rogan changed all that. But I think it just takes away some of the authenticity and the true, like, I don't know, the vibe that comes off of all that when you do that. Do you see that happening with like AI as well? And, you know, technology just moves so fast at times that like people become too reliant on it. And then I don't feel like they maintain any sort of like human touch or personality, you know, almost in the same way that like people get so quick to text message or just send that uncomfortable email instead of picking up the phone and having the conversation.
Absolutely.
And lose all the tone and everything.
Yeah, I think that the wrong move is to use AI as a replacement for human connection instead of an enhancement of it. And I think some people are leaning on it to be a replacement. And those people are, the tragedy of it is those people are ruining it for everyone, right? The people that leverage AI to replace human connection are making those that use it as an enhancement look bad, right? So if you're reaching out to me and it's an AI chatbot that's talking to me, I'm automatically going to write off anyone using an AI chatbot because I'm so dissuaded by this. However, the right person that's using it to leverage it the right way might be missing out on an opportunity now because I've written it off because of the other guy that used it wrong. And so, you know, but I think that's just life. That's just how things go. There's always going to be people that, you know, go the wrong way. And we kind of day in and day out rely on people to have their own discernment, you know, and say, hey, all right, this guy's not, you know, leveraging. So, but yeah, I think that those that are using it as a replacement are doing it wrong. But those that are using it as a background function, as a research assistant tool, as a, you know, a starting point for things, or even as a, you know, like, it's amazing some of the things I've had. There's a friend of mine that I met that showed me some of the things he's doing with it. Some of these things that he's doing, it just automates so much in the background. It's really amazing knowing, like, man, this can just happen.
I know people that are using it to write entire contracts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
like, I mean, it's insane what it can do right now.
But I think that their over-reliance on it, I'm not a big fan of losing important skills. And so I still value my own communication skills. So if I'm going to use AI to write something, I'm still going to go through it and proofread it, punch it up a little bit, kind of put my own verbiage in it. Because I think that skill of communication is still important.
Okay, we've got a question for you.
Okay.
Let's see here. All right. As a department head, you want to hire and mentor your replacement. In tough economic times when companies are thinking of cutting back, how do you approach your CEO if you think he may be entertaining cutting the more expensive mentor in favor of the less experienced or less expensive?
Well, there's two things. One, you can only influence other people's mind. You can't control their ideas, their thoughts. So if that's something that they're thinking about, you'll be seen through if you try to convince them otherwise. So that's one thing to take in mind. I'm a big proponent of controlling your own side of the street and taking responsibility for your own actions. It's always a good idea to take the lead on training your replacement because redundancy is important without being so threatened by the concept of, man, I'm really just training my replacement. They're going to get rid of me. I would look at it a little bit differently. I would really look at it for the thing that I get to put on my resume and in my next job interview of, hey, I actually, before I left that last job, I actually trained my replacement. What you're showing the value to that next, if you do get laid off because of that scenario, you're able to go to the next place and say, hey, I left my last company on good terms by training my replacement and made sure they had no missed work or opportunity or whatever. Because that's so exceedingly rare in the job force. So many people leave on bad terms. They're incapable of replicating themselves. So if you've demonstrated the capability of replicating yourself, you've already added so much value to what you bring to that next company, that next opportunity. But also, if you're training someone to replace yourself, you're also leaving yourself room to advance, to level up. So if you're, an executive or something in one company in one area, the next one you go to, you're looking at really that next level up. So if you're really concerned about it happening, I would go on the offensive and start looking at what other opportunities you can land at another company, maybe at a level up and the salary increase, not be so scared to leave that position. But also, I may be the worst person to ask this because I'm always a fan of candid conversation. I would want to have a candid conversation with that CEO and say, hey, can I ask where you see my growth in this company and what's holding me back from advancing to the next level, whatever that next level is, and what is the next level for me, and what are the things that you need to see from me to consider me for this next role, or what are the things in my department that are lacking that you need to see shored up that I can control or try to shore up in this amount of time. That's the kind of conversations I'd have. Now, not everyone is
I agree 100%
like me
with
and
that.
as receptive to those kinds of questions. So some people are scared to have that conversation
It's
because
a tough conversation.
yeah, because the CEO might fly off the handle and let you go there, which is why I also advocate for taking that offensive position and start looking at other jobs, maybe talk to recruiters and basically get your exit lined up if that's what you think. It depends on where you are. I don't know where you're at in that process or where things are, but that's kind of my approach on it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like you have to have the tough conversation because I almost kind of sometimes in my position have the opposite problem to a degree. And I like what you said about that. I mean, if you have the experience that you were able to replicate your successes and everything that you've learned and train someone quickly or even in a short amount of time to fully take on that role to where you're able to move up or move on. I mean, that's an extreme ability that not a lot of people have.
Yeah.
I almost have it too in certain instances too, where a lot of the people in the position below mine, they're very content there. I can train them to do my job, but it doesn't mean they want my job.
Right.
It's just depends on where you're at. And I think specific roles definitely play a role in which way you go with that. But I like that you gave two options there. One's kind of it's like an A and a B, but really you should be doing the A-B plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do one without the other. If I'm going to have that conversation, I at least want to identify what the exits are. You got to have your parachute. You got to, at the end of the day, nobody's job it's nobody's job to feed your family but yours, and you got to look out for yourself because nobody else is going to.
What do you think are some of the key things then? Because markets and everything are expanding so fast today with everything we've already talked about, from AI to just the way the economy and the world's moving today. So what's maybe some advice you have for entrepreneurs that are either looking to move into new markets or grow into other markets, or maybe they're just jumping into a whole new market, period?
I think that there's value in what you know. I think stay in your lane. So I'll say it. I don't know if this answers the question, but this is how I'm thinking of it. I owned a security company that served apartment complexes, and like I mentioned earlier, I had looked at a landscaping company. And the reason I didn't do it is because of focus at the time. But the reason I think it would have been a really good business move, because the strategy I was putting behind my idea behind it was, I'm already working with these apartment complexes who are already getting landscaping from other companies. If I also have a landscaping company, then I'm going to my same customers first, saying, what are you paying for landscaping now? What if I charge you just a little bit better than break even? Because I actually don't need to make a living off this landscaping company. I'm making a living off my security company. So I can get in the door to get some credibility working with these apartment complexes. Well, let me unpack this a little bit more in a second too. So for one is getting my anchors in the apartment complexes I'm already serving by expanding that relationship, leveraging the relationship I already have, but also using some of the manpower I already have. So I already had an operations manager who was managing my nighttime staff, but he worked during daytime hours. Logistically, the way I looked at it as, well, instead of having just trucks running at night with security guards in it, I can have trucks running during the day with landscapers in it. And it's the same operations manager who's essentially doing the same thing. You're doing a person in a vehicle going to provide service to a different company. The service might be a little bit different, but there's a lot of overlap there. The other reason that was so appealing to me, and this is something that I learned firsthand, there's B2B and B2C companies, business to business, business to consumer. In business to consumer, it's usually a smaller ticket, so a smaller sale, like I'm going to sell you something for $100 and you're going to give me money now. It's quicker cash flow, smaller ticket, and so you need a higher volume to make good money. And so your opportunities for scale are usually not in one city; they're usually much bigger cities. I didn't like the B2C model when I looked at getting into a business for myself because I didn't want to be overly reliant on hopefully enough customers come in today to buy enough things for me today, and then tomorrow I'm fighting the exact same battle all over again. That was scary to me. That was very risky. B2B, especially in the service industry like I did, I'm making this one sale today and I'm going to sell a $1,000 a month patrol contract, but it's $1,000 a month. So this one sale is now $1,000 every month as long as I serve it right, if I made the sale right and I can fulfill that. So my next sale is another $1,000 on top of that. So you kind of grow more exponentially. The challenge with it is B2B, you normally have longer payment terms. So I may make this sale today. We're going to start in 30 days. And then you're going to get an invoice and you're going to pay it 30 days later. So I'm not getting this money until 60 days from now. Now I'm going to get $1,000 instead of $100, but I'm going to have to put a lot of money up front before I get to that point. And so it's much slower cash flow, but much higher dollars. And, margins, I used to think margins were different one to the other, but it's not exactly. Margins are all over the place depending on the business model. So I was in a strictly B2B business without really a B2C avenue. But what I saw were there were businesses out there that had a B2B component, which meant higher ticket items, even though it was a longer sales cycle, but they had a B2C component, which was lower ticket items, but direct cash flow. And that was what I liked about landscaping. And so what I saw was an opportunity to open up a B2C revenue stream for myself that would give me the day-to-day cash flow, immediate, more quick cash cycles to feed me until those B2B bills got paid. Because, it may be send an invoice net 30, but then they're late net 60, net 90 before they finally pay it. Now I'm doing late fees and chasing everybody to make, pay their bills, which is an annoying thing I still deal with in my business to this day. It's just a constant battle in the B2B space. Whereas when you're doing landscaping, I'm sending an invoice every single week and you're paying that bill every single week. And I want it, paid quickly or I'm not cutting your grass next week. And so that was what was appealing about it. So to bolt on a landscaping company gave me a leverage opportunity to do a little bit more than break even, to have trucks on the road with all the branding driving around. And then when it's going to this apartment complex to cut, I can go to this neighborhood right next door to the apartment complex and pick up a few more yards from it. So I'm opening up, basically a cash flow from the B2C until that B2B pays. And so both of those engines looked like they made sense. The B2B business with security, the B2B business with landscaping, and the B2C with landscaping. And then just growing that seemed like an engine. And truly, I think those are both really good symbiotic businesses. So what I would say to people is, where can you leverage your current position to expand your reach? And what is the advantages it really going to give you? Or you're going to, so for me, the advantage was opportunity for quicker cash flow. And, maybe the customers I'm already serving with security, I'm going to give break even, but anybody else, I'll do a little bit better and I'll make a little bit better margin because I'll essentially be the primary guy doing with apartment complexes. And so that was kind of my angle that I was approaching that from. And so even as I say today, I wish I had that, because that'd be great, symbiotic business. But I think however that resonates, or whoever's listening to this, what is it in your business? What's complementary to your business that you can maybe work with your current client base or leverage your current client base that offers them a value? So the value to my customers is, hey, buy security from me, you get landscaping way cheaper, or vice versa. And, that's a value to them. And then tell all your friends, tell your employees if they, whatever, I'll cut their grass too. Or any of your vendors that work here, I'll cut their grass, I'll give them a deal. And so my leverage opportunity was just the fact that I didn't need to make a living off of it. So as long as it pays for the service, I'm good. And so, I don't know, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect to it, like in how to combine things that you're already doing.
Yeah.
And how to provide further value. Again, finding more value you can provide.
Yeah.
It's solving problems and providing value. I mean, at the
Right.
end of the day, no matter how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
In any business.
And how can you do it in the most economical way for you and your business? And so, like, the economical way for me was, instead of needing to hire a separate manager to run the landscaping business, I can use this manager who I had at the time was underutilized. Basically, he was working 40 hours a week in a management role, and truly he had more bandwidth. And so giving him more employees was a way to take advantage of an economic opportunity I already had in my business. So look at what your leverage opportunities are in your business and how can you leverage that to provide more value.
That's awesome. Something else I want to bring up, and I'm going to pause for a minute here. You guys have seen me rocking this for a while now. You guys all know about Operation Yellow Tape and my good friend Kenny Mitchell. He's got another close friend of his that was a lieutenant with him, battling some really hardcore cancer right now. You guys go to the Operation Yellow Tape page, check it out. If you feel inclined to help, he's got some stuff set up on there to help out another one of the friends in the family of Operation Yellow Tape. But again, we've talked about this several times, but I think it's really important. And I really don't want to see another post, hopefully for a while, about somebody losing a loved one or, making a tough decision in an instance where that situation could change very quickly. And mental health awareness right now is very, very important, especially during the holidays. So I'm sure with your vast military background, this has had a big impact in your life, and security and the trauma from what you guys see when you were in the service to security and stuff like that. How do you deal with that, and how do you focus on mental health, and what kind of strategies have you employed to help yourself and others work through those kind of things?
I'm a huge fan of just openness and vulnerability. I think that people are intimidated to open up and share what's really going on. And sometimes what that leads to is lack of really self-awareness. Like, they don't even really know what's going on, because if you're not talking to anybody else about it, you're maybe not even thinking about it for yourself. But I usually lead with vulnerability. I like to open up the vulnerability conversation by sharing something, maybe that most people wouldn't share. Like, hey, I struggle with this, or I'm having a hard time with that. I'll start there with people. And what I find is that people are very receptive to that, and it sets the stage for them to open back up. And so if someone would share something that they're struggling with, I'll share, hey, I went through something very similar. Here's where I was at. Here's what I did about it. And every now and then this still comes up. Like for me, I don't like being isolated for too long. I don't do well when I'm not in an accountability environment. I don't like the way I behave, the way I conduct myself. And so I keep myself accountable to other people, and I don't let myself stay isolated for too long. If I start to find myself isolated for too long, where I start to kind of like feel alone or lonely, my first response now, and I had to learn to do this, was a learned behavior, but just to, all right, I'm going to get out of the house and go somewhere. I'm going to call someone, I'll just go hang out with somebody. I think most people that struggle, they get intimidated to make that first step, to make that reach out. Oh, I don't want to be a burden, on them or whatever. The hack that I found for not being a burden on one person is to have 15 people to be a burden on. And that sounds counterintuitive, but the fun in that is I'm not actually going to wear one person out by calling them every single time I'm having a problem. If I got 15 people that I'm going to talk to about it, I'll rotate through them. This time I'm having a hard time, I'll reach out to this person, or maybe 3 people because I don't like the way what this first person told me. But after 3 people tell me the same thing, like, okay, maybe they're all right, you know? And so, but I'm also not wearing any one person out because I've got multiple people that I can reach out to. And I want to be that for them too. And so the best way to find people to be that for you is to be that for them. So find someone that's having a hard time and just be a listening ear, be a supportive voice, and be willing to be vocal and point out to them what they're doing really well in their life, because not enough people hear where they're doing well in life. In your head, it's so easy to convince yourself of all the things you're doing wrong. I do it too. Like, believe it or not, I can tell myself all the areas that I see myself a failure. But sometimes it just takes one conversation with one person where they're genuinely telling me something about me that they find inspiring, motivating, or just empowering about something, or something that I've been able to tell them that helped them through a hard time, to remind me of, oh, I'm not, an idiot. I'm not useless. Like, I have value to people. And because if you get in that moment, it's easy to kind of stay on that cycle, but it takes a little bit of gumption to put yourself out there and reaching out. But I think the starting point is just be that safe place for someone, and you'd be surprised how many of them will be a safe place for you. And if you've been a safe place for 15 people, you've got 15 people that are willing to be a safe place for you. And don't be too proud to show weakness to them and say, hey, I'm having a real hard time right now, or I'm really lonely, right now. I told someone today, I'm weird. I'll just spout out.
We're all weird.
I just spout out my darkest thoughts where I am at any given time, just when they come up. In part because I've learned from experience that mold grows in darkness, but when you put light on it, it stops growing. And these other problems are very much the same way. If you leave them in darkness, they're going to continue to grow and fester and create bigger problems for you down the road. When you shine light on them, it magically cures. And so I literally said to someone today, I said, I was so lonely yesterday, and this is a true story. I was so lonely yesterday, I seriously contemplated texting my ex to tell her, hope you have a Merry Christmas, and that's stupid. I don't text your ex, people, but
yeah.
But I battle loneliness like anybody else, and that's what lonely looked like for me in that moment. But I think that when I share that with someone that may not know that side of me, it makes me more relatable to them, and it makes them feel like they can open up to me about whatever they deal with. Because hey, I'm human, I deal with human things too, and maybe I sometimes need to be reminded, don't text your ex, So. Anyway, that's how I address those things for myself.
Well, and everybody thinks that everybody else, maybe they don't. I don't want to say it like too cliche there, but I mean, everybody has problems, and until you start talking about something, and then all of a sudden it's like, then the person opens up to you and tells you about what they're dealing with, and you're like, well, shit, my problem isn't near as bad, man. Like, I mean, yeah. Man, maybe I should be a little more grateful. Maybe I should show a little more gratitude.
Yeah.
And maybe that changes the outlook right there in itself. I mean, I know I've had to do that at times. I mean, I can remember a time not too long ago where I was just sitting on the patio in my backyard having a moment, just enjoying a cigar, wasn't talking, wasn't watching anything, wasn't playing with my phone, anything. And my wife was like, "Are you all right?" Just came up and she's like, you've been really quiet. You're acting really weird. I was like, I realized today I hadn't, taken any time to be grateful for some of the things in my life. Like, here I am bitching and moaning about how tough this or that is, or, worried about this and worried about that. And, really, is it that bad? I needed that reality check for myself. And, yeah. I mean, it wasn't long, but, I really needed to just sit in my space, yeah, and kind of just absorb that and be like, man, it really isn't that bad. Yeah, this sucks right now, but it's not that bad.
The best way I heard it put, and I wish I could say I came up with this, but I didn't, your thoughts are not you. And I think that a lot of people fail to recognize that, especially when you're taken over by your thoughts. And if you can find a way to bring yourself outside of that moment when those kind of thoughts are going and just observe the thoughts and be like, that's an interesting idea that you just brought up, brain, to say that I'm useless or whatever, or I'm a failure. Where's that coming from? Why are you saying that? Like, instead of embodying the thought, just observing the thought and maybe exploring it a little deeper and saying, where's this coming from? You know, who told you that you're useless? You know, because I haven't heard anybody say that in a long time. This is coming from somewhere, you know, and because it's definitely not true. And so if you can externalize yourself from your thoughts, it's a hard thing, but this is where I don't do a lot of meditation, but meditation does good for this. But just kind of removing yourself from your thoughts and just really internalizing the fact that your thoughts aren't really you. They're a product of all kinds of different inputs. Sometimes it's a product of what you ate or how little you slept even, you know. It's just simply, This is a thought. I am not necessarily what my thoughts say about me. Just like your internet browser history isn't, you know, really you. Like, just because this is on my internet, this is not who I am. Don't judge me on that.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
If you can externalize that, you know, like, my car is not me. You know, it might be a representation of me. You might recognize me because of the car I drive or the clothes that I'm wearing, but it's not me. It's just something that I put on for now or something I'm sitting in for now.
Yeah.
And your thoughts are really much the same way. And ultimately, you can have some control over your thoughts. You can really, like, say, you know what? I'm not going to let that spiral out of control anymore. I'm going to break the cycle. And that's kind of what I do is I use action. That's my hack is I'll do some action that might be the antithesis of my thoughts. And that action might be reaching out to someone or going somewhere, putting myself in a social environment rather than being by myself. And that's kind of how I overcome that.
And you've created the discipline to do that and to have those reactions, to take the actions.
Yeah. And look, I can't give enough credit to therapy. I've been in and out of therapy for the last, 10 plus years, lots of therapy. And, learned some of these things through therapy, and reading books and like different things and conversations with people. You can only hear so many things about yourself that you didn't believe before from someone else enough times before you start to believe it. I didn't think much of myself. Just a few short years ago, I thought very poorly of myself. But after hearing good things about myself from enough different people that didn't know each other, that just on their own volition shared something about me that they thought was great about me, I eventually started to believe it. Instead of letting myself not believe it, calling it humility. No, like, okay, I am kind of good in this. I am good at that. This is a strength of mine. And eventually you start to believe those things and about yourself. And then what comes with that is a level of confidence that you really just can't fake.
Manifest it.
Yeah. Really, I just started to believe it. Like there was things that were already good about me. I just refused to see it or acknowledge it. I'd brush it off if someone would say it. But after a while, I would hear it and be like, what if they're right? What if I am actually good at that? Like, where's this voice coming from that says you're not or says that they're just being nice, And just started to believe it after a while. I'm like, I am good at this. This is a strength, And
it's funny, too, because you got to sit and take everything in and not be real quick to judge in a lot of these instances. Because, like, I will be 100% honest. When we first started talking and I heard you tell the other person that was in the conversation with us, I'm a business coach.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, fuck me. Yeah. Another business coach
I know.
here.
We're a dime a dozen.
Of course, I am now got myself in a conversation with another guy that's selling a business coach thing here.
I get it.
And I was like, oh, shit. So now guards went up real quick. And I'm like, all right. So, but we continued to have a conversation. And, like, again, it was one of those, like, not one time did you try to pitch me on what you were doing, what you were coaching. You were asking me a lot of really good questions, and I was like, man, I got to get this guy on the podcast. Like, and we exchanged information and stuff, and like went and checked out your website and everything and just started kind of looking into things. Hell, and we didn't even become friends on social media until literally like the day after I asked you to be on the show. But it's a lot of those too. Like sometimes, like, don't be so quick to put your guard up too. Like give it a chance to be a little more open and to hear them. Yeah. And like really kind of figure out like, okay, so what if you were just another business coach? All right, maybe you're the one that's like I need to be talking to. I don't know that, But if I start asking you questions and really kind of get to know who Jason is and figure that out, you'll be surprised what you end up learning.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And look, I've seen that too. I was surprised how many business coaches they had out here. I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of them. And there was some intimidation factor with that. Like, man, how do I stand out with all these? But again, taking advantage of my virtually unlimited runway, because I've got a business that pays the bills. I was like, you know what? I don't have to sell anything to anyone. I actually don't need to make money. And like, to date, I've been in Dallas. It's December 2024. I've been in Dallas since June of 23. I haven't made $1 in Dallas yet. And I'm totally fine with that. In fact, that's kind of become the thing. I've told people like, hey, I haven't made $1 yet here. I'll make, there's plenty of money to be made once I actually help people. I'll help people and I'll make money from that.
Yeah.
But what I like is, I'll tell people, I'm like, hey, I'm the only guy in Dallas not trying to sell you anything right now. Like, so we should just have coffee because I have nothing to sell you. I just want to get to know people. Because I also recognize, and I talked to another guy who's really, really successful. He had a bit of a start kind of like where I'm at now, where he had a business and he sold it and he pivoted to coaching, and he's done really, really well. And he and I had done a call and we were talking, and hearing his story, I was like, man, it sounds like I'm where you are just a few years ago. And he told me, he's like, honestly, people don't do business with me until like it's typically day one of meeting them to doing business with me. It's about 8 months. I was like, okay, that's about what I thought. Like when I was selling security, I wasn't selling anyone day of. It was 90 days if I'm lucky. By 6 months, if we're not doing business together, I'll just kind of delist them and I'll check back in with them, 6 months later. Maybe a manager needs to change or something else needs to change. We're usually doing business within 90 days to 6 months in the security space. I'm like, how much more if I need to know everything about your business and your books and where the warts are and, where the bodies are buried? Like, no one just entrusts that to a stranger. So I need to be not a stranger. What better way to be not a stranger than go be friendly, go meet people, go make friends. You don't know anybody anyway. Go meet people, And so that's what I've been doing.
And I think people miss that mark a lot of times too, because, I'll use another example. And I think I talked about this before too. Like when Ryan listed the speakers at the Apex event we were at, I immediately went and checked all of them out. I immediately followed a few of them that I found interesting and started watching them. Well, one of the first ones I clicked on was Derek Rowe.
Yeah.
And I saw his post like, hey, I'm going to be in the U.S. for however long. If you have a podcast or anything like that, I would love to sit down, have a conversation, get to know you, whatever. So I messaged him, was like, hey, man, I would love to have you on and talk some more. I was like, if we can coordinate it after the event or whatever, because I was real cautious too. Like I didn't want to step on anything Ryan was doing. Not that I don't think a lot of people in Apex really follow me. I haven't pushed my podcast in Apex. But I reached out to him and he reached right back, man. And we just started having a conversation, man. And he used voice messages instead of texting or just writing back all the time. So we instantly kind of clicked on that. And man, I felt like I'd known this dude forever before we ever met. And when he was coming in, I was telling him hey, if you need a gym to work out at, I mean, I have guest passes. No one that ever comes visits hey, I want to go to the gym with you.
Right.
That never happened. So I was like, dude, I have guest passes, whatever. I work out at Lifetime. It's a badass gym. I know you don't know what that is, but I promise you'll like it. There's everything you could need there. So let me know if you need a pass. And lo and behold, the day before, and we never met in person. The day before we were going to do the podcast, I walk into the gym and it just happened to be a day where I went late. My day was bad or my night was bad, didn't sleep well, whatever. And I went in late and I'm looking across the gym and I see this dude just getting after it. And I'm like, that's Derek. I'm almost 100% sure. And I went up and started talking to him. He was like, yeah, man. He's like, you said it was cool. And hell, they didn't even ask me for your pass. They just let me in and said, have fun, enjoy it, check out the place, see if you like it. And, and then we just immediately bonded from there and kept talking. And and I even told Derek this when we were hanging out after the fact was man, what's really cool is you agreed to do this, not even knowing me at all. You had never seen one of my podcasts. You had no idea what you were getting yourself into. You came here and were truly you. You cared more about building a friendship and networking and just being a normal human being and truly trying to get to know me. and we just became friends. I was like, and it's
That's
really
awesome.
cool that like your whole thing is being a business coach and like helping people. You've not once told me about your program outside of the podcast, what we talked about on there. You've never tried to pitch me or anything. He's like, yeah, bro. He's like, I figured if you wanted to talk to me about something like that, you're just going to talk to me. Like,
Right.
you know, I don't need to try to sell you. He's like,
Yeah.
are you doing a bunch of cocaine and have a problem? I was like, no, definitely not doing cocaine, bro. So like, we're good there. So yeah, it was, you know, it was just cool though. Like, but so many people don't even take that opportunity, man. It doesn't have to be like what you want from them or what they want from you. Like, you know, you can just totally legit try and build a relationship, get to know the person. Like, that's what really matters. That the rest, the business, the sales, that all comes because eventually they're going to ask you, like, so, like, what do you do? Like, well, why aren't we doing this together? If that's actually something that they're in, if you've taken the time to build that relationship.
Yeah, we live in a world that's, I say all the time, that it's starving for connection. I mean, everyone's online and they just want to feel connected. They want to be known. They want to be loved. They want to be recognized. They want to be valued and appreciated. The entire time I spent in Afghanistan, I was glued to social media if I wasn't working, because it was my only like lifeline to like normal life, you know? And I had to kick some of those habits when I moved back home, or I came back home from that, but it was, I know firsthand what that's like. And I feel like I was doing that 2010 to 2012. So that was kind of like before its time. But I really think a lot of people live now in 2024 the same way I was in 2010 to 2012. When I was in Afghanistan, and the only way to connect with people was through social media, my friends back home or whatever. I think people literally exist in that same space, and they're right here in our backyard, or they're, you know, 500 feet down the street, maybe sitting in an apartment right now, and they're bored, they're lonely, and their only outlet to the world is through social media. And because I've lived it, I have a lot of empathy for that, because I know how miserable that is and how sad that is. And so I just try to do the best that I can to provide connection to every person around I come in contact with. If there's an opportunity for it, I'm there for it. If they're not interested, that's fine. I'm not going to force it. But to me, there's nothing more valuable than connection. It's the precursor to everything. In romantic relationships, in business, in friendship, and just everything in between. I just feel like it's so valuable.
I agree. And, you know, that's a hard transition, too. And, I mean, I get caught up in that at times, too, because, like, it's impossible to do any of my jobs without having a social media presence.
Right.
As much as I would like to get rid of, like, most social media, I mean, it's the only way I can grow the businesses.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. And training yourself to not get caught up into, like, just completely aimlessly scrolling and learning how to use it as a tool it can be overwhelming, and it's hard to do too. Like, you'll catch yourself at times still just aimlessly scrolling, but using some of the functions to see what's trending, see what are people talking about, see what problems they're having. That is way more impactful and helps you guide you in certain directions in all aspects.
And here's the annoying part. Until you get to a point, and I'm not there where I have a lot of followers or anything, but until you get to a point where you have like millions of followers or thousands or tens of thousands or whatever the threshold is, I don't know. Until you get to a certain point, the algorithms don't normally favor you, right?
Not at all.
But I saw somebody posted this one time, and I tried it, and it actually worked, but I don't have the time to do this. If you post a video on TikTok, like I do, like on my business page, I'll post a video, and then right after posting it, scroll, watch videos, like, and comment, and do that. While I'm doing that, I'm getting more views on my video. The moment I stop, my video stops showing up in people's feeds, because everyone whose video I liked or commented.
Is that just on TikTok?
I don't know if it's just, I'm assuming they all must.
I don't do TikTok, so I'm asking.
I'm assuming Instagram might work the same way, but I don't know. But I noticed that TikTok, my views are climbing, and as soon as I disengage, the views stop. I'm like, But they're rewarding that time on thing. I'm like, if I had enough money to pay someone to sit there and do that for me, I would, and you'd get a lot more views. But like until then, I'm just gonna deal with, you know, the views that I get, and just, you know, hope to strike, you know, lightning or something, however that works at some point. But I have seen that to be the case. I'm like, man, I don't want to sit here and play these algorithm games on all these different social media platforms.
You can't get caught in that.
Yeah.
You know, I gave up a while ago on that to a certain degree. Like, if this happens, it's going to happen organically and not from a lack of trying, you know,
Sure.
like we've made tweaks and we're doing certain things, but you get bombarded with all these people from all over the world.
Yeah.
I'm an SEO expert. You're not doing your hashtags right. You're not doing this right. You're not doing that right.
Yeah.
Pay me $300 a month and I'll get you 10,000 followers a month, all this and that. I mean, so much of that is just complete bullshit. And, you know, Ryan made a good post last week, or maybe it was earlier this week, talking about, man, like the blue check mark and having 1 million followers isn't what it used to be.
It's true.
The game's changing. Like, you're better off with 5,000 people that really legitimately follow you and are interested in knowing that those are your people and then working within that group.
Yeah.
Because reality is now you can link and advertise and do the different things with like a Tony Robbins, I think was the example he gave. You know, Tony Robbins has 10 million followers or whatever. But you can advertise to like that group. If there's something in that group of Tony Robbins' people that you know is going to be a hit, you can link up with that and then go advertise to it. So you having the 10 million followers isn't necessarily like the end all be all.
Right.
Like now it's turning into like, what's your reach?
Yeah.
How much reach are you getting on everything? And like, I'm sure there's some people that have that figured out how to maximize that, whether that's clicking on the other things that are like that when you post your stuff or whatever, who knows? I still have clearly not figured all that shit out, but I think you almost have to have like a master's degree in social media to understand all that shit.
Yeah, it's tricky, and it's not my specialty or strength at all. It's something I'm still figuring out as I go. I think like a lot of people out there, and like you, I get people all the time, hey, I'll do this, I'll do that. You want to write a book? You know, I help coaches get clients.
Write a book. There's your other one.
I'm not trying to play those games. If I write a book, I'll write it myself, and it'll probably not even be about business. It'll be about having 16 siblings and grow up in Louisiana or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just that stuff is so crazy, man. Like, and people get so caught up in that. Like, instead of just doing it, if you like doing it and enjoy doing it, but also be authentic and be real, put yourself out there. Because what's funny is, and I've started to notice with these shorter clips and stuff, I had my like protege, like my younger estimator on like 2 weeks ago. And it's when we first switched over to this new program and started putting some of the clips out. You know what the most viewed clip is so far out of the little mini clips? The one where we were talking about new tattoos and getting laser tattoo removal.
Interesting.
It was like a minute and, 64 seconds or something like that. That has the most views so far.
Oh, that's awesome.
You pick something random like that
you
out
never
of
even
all
know.
the great insight we give in different segments, and that's one that it picked because it was trending topics or whatever, and that's the one that gets the most view. It's absolutely insane.
It's funny. Comedy kind of works that way too. The jokes that you think are kind of the dumbest, sometimes the ones that get the best traction. Like, come on, y'all, that was my dumbest yet.
Yeah, but you're laughing, so I did my job. Right. Here we go.
The ones that I think are going, oh, this is going to be so good, and I tell it, it just bombs. I'm like, well, I liked it.
Yeah. Sorry, you have no sense of humor. So when you look back at your career so far to date, what do you think's been one of the moments where you looked back and thought, man, I never expected to end up here or expected this to happen?
Really, moving to Dallas. The move to Dallas was such a pivotal moment in my life. I grew up in Louisiana. I left for the military for a little while and went to Bible school for a couple of years in Texas, moved back home, and then evacuated for Katrina and pretty much stayed in Arkansas, switching the Air Force. I was there for a few years, bought a house, thought I was going to stay in Arkansas, and I thought I was going to work in federal government for a career. And then when I took the job in Afghanistan, my brother passed away. His widow decided to raise his children in our hometown. That was something that was important to him, and that was what he wanted to do when he got out of the military. And so my wife at the time said, well, he always, wanted to your kids to grow up with his kids. Why don't we move back there? You got this job in Afghanistan. You can do it from anywhere. So I moved back to my hometown after thinking I wouldn't do that. And so I did that in 2010. And I liked it at first. It was nostalgic and fun. But after a while, I just felt like I didn't like Louisiana anymore. I love the people, love the food. My family is amazing. Just Louisiana itself was just like, man, this is not my world. And I knew I wanted to leave eventually at some point, somewhere. Didn't really know where. Dallas was like a pipe dream. Like, oh, maybe somewhere like Dallas would be cool. But in my mind, I was like, man, how many millions of dollars do I have to move to Dallas? Like, that seems like an expensive place. Never been to Dallas before. I just so when we had the opportunity to buy a franchise, and Denton, Frisco, and McKinney was our territory, it was 6 different ownership groups that were buying the DFW Metroplex, and none of them lived in Dallas. They all owned franchises in other cities. And so I was like, well, I'll move to Dallas then, since we'll have somebody there. And so I just kind of, in January of 23, said I was going to do it, and by June moved out here. And that was kind of a, for all intents and purposes, somewhat spontaneous, decision that I made. And then right after moving was when my business partner made me an offer to buy me out of the partnership. So all of a sudden, I'm not even in the security business here anymore like I thought I was going to be. That's how I thought I was going to meet people, was by selling security. And so really just found myself isolated and alone in Dallas, running a business remotely with a girlfriend in New Orleans and kids in Arkansas, and not really having any business in Dallas. But I'm like, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to stay here. I love it here. And that was really like, at first it was, I don't know if I'm ready for Dallas. Like, I don't know, man. And then the next iteration of it, kind of the beginning of this year, is, all right, how do I fit in here? And really in the last 3 months, it's been morphed into, how do I stand out here? And so that's been kind of the metamorphosis I've been in the last year and a half of being here. And that's really, when I think of the whole span of my life right now, what stands out the most is just, man, how did I end up in Dallas? And like, being able to meet so many great people, and being able to walk into some rooms where like several people know me and are happy to see me. I'm like, well, that's cool. Considering a year and a half ago, nobody knew me at all. Yeah. That's such a cool pivot to been able to make, and to been able to make a positive impact on people's lives in such a short amount of time.
That's awesome, man. Well, please feel free to call me anytime, man. I'm happy to hang out with you.
Yeah, thank you.
So
I'll call you instead of texting my ex, if that's cool.
There you go. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. I'm happy to help you solve that problem. Mallory says, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
So we're going to kind of bring this to an end. I know you've got another thing to hop on here in a little bit that you've got to go take care of, but I think I want to kind of wrap it up with a few things, just a couple more things.
Sure.
You've been in a lot of high-pressure environments, and I'm sure that's had to shape a lot of this, and we've talked about that some throughout this, but what do you think some of those high-pressure situations, what were the lessons you learned that helped you like kind of get through the pressure cooker of modern business that you're able to like really share with others, or that has really changed your outlook the most?
Perspective is one, but before I get to perspective, there are moments when you're in a combat zone and chaos might happen. In the midst of the chaos, it's important that you're calm and able to focus on what it is that you do, what you do well, what you know you can do, and what you can control, and what's going on around you. Just taking it all in, making snap judgments, making decisions quickly. That can't be understated. That's a skill that's got to be learned. But in order to get there, there's a lot of training that has to happen to get to that point. The old saying is, you don't rise to the level of your something. You fall to the level of your training. And so I forget what that first one is, but anyway, so you just resort to your training. Whatever your highest level of training is what your baseline is going to be. So if you're not trained for this or whatever, so that's important. So I already had that skill before kind of starting in business, and I think that was an important skill that's carried me through. And that's one of the things that I aspire to do for business owners, because a business can be a very chaotic place, is to help them create order out of chaos and find calm in that chaos, and just say, hey, everyone's yelling right now. let them yell, be focused. What do you know to do? What's the best way to respond, and all those things. But the other part of it is perspective. Because the other thing is, when there's lives on the line and there's real, stakes that, is a matter of life and death, if you can bring yourself back to that perspective in whatever it is you're going through now and really take the perspective of, okay, yes, this is a really bad thing. Yes, this is threatening this and everything else. But if you really can put it in perspective, and this is hard for a lot of people to do. I had to do this for myself. What's the absolute worst that could happen right now with this customer that's upset over this employee that's done this terrible thing and whatever, and I've got to respond to it. And really let yourself go there. Okay, worst case scenario, they're my biggest customer. They fire me. My whole business caves, and I go bankrupt. Okay, that's worst case scenario. That sucks. However, I'm not dead, and I can still go and get another job, start another business, go make money somewhere else, or go back to Afghanistan, whatever that is. The truth is, nobody died in this scenario. And if I can get that perspective, it gives me that edge that I need to get calm a little bit. Be like, you know what? The worst case scenario sucks. Anything better than the worst case scenario, I'm going to consider an improvement over the worst case scenario. So if I can get any outcome better than that, I'll call it a win. So just find your wins where you can take them. And 9 times out of 10, that mentality helps get a way better outcome than if you'd have gone into it in a panic. So operating in that panic is the worst thing. But if you can get yourself in a space of not giving in to the panic that's happening around you, but kind of get yourself under control, just kind of get a grip and say, okay, here's what I can do. And what that looked like for me, if I've got an upset client, trust me, it's happened. I don't know how many times. I mean, everybody, you're going to have upset clients sometimes.
Absolutely.
And what I do is I just own it and say, all right, I'd be upset too if I was in your situation. Here's what I plan to do about it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to fire the person, not fire the person, or whatever. I'm not going to let them on your side or whatever. If I do all these things, is that going to be satisfactory to you? No. Okay. How about I throw in the next month free? I'll just go ahead and eat your next month bill. Is that going to be, whatever it is, I'm going to go in my offer. Here's what I'm prepared to do. If I do all this, is that going to be satisfactory to you? Yeah, but I don't want this to happen again. Okay, so this is what I'm doing about this, but here's what I'm doing to not let it happen again. Here's how I'm planning to address that. I'll follow back up with you in 2 weeks and give you the results of that. Would that be okay? And so by doing that, I'm showing a little vulnerability to them. Hey, yeah, you got me. We dropped the ball here, but here's what I'm doing about it. I'm showing them how I solve those problems, and I'm going to earn their trust back, and I'm getting a way better outcome out of it. And a lot of that comes from just really the combination of all that, the perspective, the experience, and the skill of kind of being calm in the midst of the chaos and just not giving in to the panic, but also kind of being empathetic and vulnerable at the same time, and just walking that tightrope of all those things. So,
man, I want to thank you because you've shared some great wisdom. You've had great insights. You've been very vulnerable. You've shown through with very true authenticity today.
Thank you.
Man, I've really enjoyed the conversation with you.
This has been fun. Thanks for having me on, man. This has been such an honor. Your 89th podcast, I was telling you earlier before we started, I'm amazed. You're already in they're probably the less than 1% of podcasts.
Well, I appreciate that greatly, man. I mean, yeah, it's tough. If it wasn't a labor of love and a passion, I mean, there's really not a whole lot of other reason to do it at this point, still 3 years down the road. But I mean, man, I get so much from it, and I hope others do too. Hopefully eventually others will find it more and more and see the value in it. But I mean, I learn stuff and make other great connections and friendships. I mean, every time I do this. So I wouldn't trade it at all. I think it's amazing. But yes, thank you, man. It's been an honor to sit here and hear your story and get to really dive into it with you. I think there's big things coming for you. I will definitely share all the links to his stuff because I bet 98% of you cannot spell bourgeois. And his website is www.bourgeois-strategy.com. But good luck. I'll put it in the notes for you guys. Well, we end every show, man, and I don't want to run you over too much here, even though we got a little late start. But we end everything with the same 2 questions typically. So I'm going to give you the tougher one first.
Okay.
So if you got to leave your children with one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
Never settle for what other people or someone else might think you are. Go all in on what you know you're capable of.
That's fucking awesome. I love that. I mean, if that's all you hear in the clip later on, that should be enough for you to go back and like really dive into what we went into today. All right, last one's the fun one to me. So it's Common Sense, the podcast. We like to call this segment my 2 cents.
Okay.
So if there's something I didn't dive into enough with you that you really wanted to go a little further on, or maybe there's something I didn't ask you or something you want to put out there that you feel inspired to say, or it really could be whatever. It's your 2 cents. So,
oh man. So blank slate. Let's see. I mentioned, we're at my roots a little bit. I think my roots are a little interesting. They kind of offer a little kind of color to who I am. And the one aspect of having a lot of siblings is a piece of it. But I think the other part of it is my great-grandfather started a business in 1891, and it's called Bourgeois Meat Market. I have no affiliation with him or anything. I'm just a big fan of the company, and I give beef jerky out to people from the meat market when I meet with them. But I learned a lot of lessons from that, just growing up in the family. One is that reputation is so important. When I started my business, I would go around, and Bourgeois is we're a very prolific family, and it's like Smith in my hometown. We're tons of bourgeois. But when I would meet with people, I would say, I'm a bourgeois, but I'm a bourgeois with the meat market family. And immediately I hear, oh, I know your uncle, or I know your dad, or whoever, or which one are you? You number 1, 2, or 3, or, so they would know that. And so I got to see firsthand the value of a great reputation that was generations in the making. And I am a very fortunate product of a family with a great reputation who really just salt of the earth. They uphold Cajun roots, and they're an old school Cajun meat market. They're a butcher shop. They happen to make the best beef jerky in the world, and that's very portable, so I can just give that out to people when I meet with them.
I'm so excited to try this.
But that's just just a big part of who I am, and I really carry that to my core. That reputation of me and who I am and what people's experiences of me is very important to me. And I didn't come up with that on my own. It's I think a product of growing up in a family like that. So
that's awesome, man. Well, I hope I can make it down there to that meat market sometime, because I'm sure that's probably got the best boudin I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. So I hope to get to go check it out sometime, man. But
yeah,
again, man, dude, thank you for coming on the show, man. Greatly enjoyed it with you. You guys have a safe, wonderful Christmas and Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. Do it right. Do it with your family. Spend quality time with them. Hope you guys have a great New Year's as well. Don't put off the things you've been putting off any longer. Just get after them. Make that phone call. Reach out to that friend, that person that may be going through some shit. Let them hear your voice. Let them talk to you. Reach out. Be there for them. Anyways, we will see you guys after the first of the year. Biz and I will be back for our yearly wrap. And then we've already got a big lineup lining up for you guys after the first of the year. I'm almost booked into mid-February now, so I'm excited. You guys got a lot of cool guests coming on. And I don't know if it'll be end of January or February yet, but the music podcast will be coming out and rocking, and we will be announcing all of that right after the first of the year. So you guys stay tuned for that. I know all the music network we have on here, you guys are going to love this. It's been a long time in the making, and I'm super excited to bring you guys this product. So you guys be safe out there. Peace.